The U.S. foreign policy since 2000 has been subject to stark criticism and debate. While some argue that it has been inconsistent and lacked clear priorities, others point to specific initiatives as evidence of Washington's leadership and engagement on the global stage. However, one thing is certain for the United States. The business of war is a significant part of the economy. U.S. foreign policy has been under the scanner more so in the last 20 years. Washington has played an active part or an active role in one war after another. Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Libya, Ukraine, and more recently Gaza. The list is long, so is the list of unexpected fallouts from these military campaigns. To begin with, the Taliban returned to power after 20 years of U.S. occupation of Afghanistan after a rather embarrassing departure. Post-Saddam, Iraq became dependent on Iran. Syria's President Bashar al-Assad stayed in power despite a CIA effort to overthrow him. Libya fell into a protracted civil war after a US-led NATO mission overthrew Muammar Gaddafi. Ukraine was bludgeoned on the battlefield by Russia in 2023 after the US secretly scuttled a peace agreement between Moscow and Kiev in 2022. And US now visibly stands globally isolated in its support of Israel's onslaught against the Palestinians. Quite interestingly, the US has only been at peace for 17 years of its 246-year history. The business of war is a significant part of the economy, with military spending as one of the largest government expenditures. The U.S. defense sector income since 2000 has been significant, with annual discretionary defense spending averaging around $600 billion. This spending is utilized to fund various military programs and activities, including research and development, procurement and operations. Now, according to a Department of Defense report, in 2022, the DoD purchased weaponry worth $44.5 billion from Lockheed Martin, $25.4 billion from Raytheon, and they also purchased weaponry worth $21.5 billion from General Dynamics Corporation. It is important to note here that all of them are American defense manufacturers. But how does the U.S. earn from wars? When war breaks out, military contractors can expect a rise in sales. Case in point, the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war. Ever since Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022, the U.S. has provided Ukraine with $44.2 billion in military assistance. Military contractors benefit from this arrangement as the U.S. buys military equipment from these institutions and sends the weaponry to Ukraine. For example, in September 2022, the DoD worked quickly to replace $1.1 billion in contracts to replenish U.S. military stocks for weapons sent to Ukraine. The breakdown includes about $352 million in funding for replacement and replacement Javelin missiles, $624 million for replacement Stinger missiles, and $33 million for replacement HIMARS systems. The Javelin missiles are manufactured exclusively by Javelin Joint Venture, a partnership between Raytheon and Lockheed Martin. Wars are a treasure chest for military contractors whose revenue increases as the U.S. turns to them to replenish their stocks. And it turns out that the U.S. defense contractors have been the biggest beneficiary of these conflicts. The case is of no different in the Israel-Hamas war. But the U.S. war machine is not only making money from the ongoing Ukraine and Israel wars, it is involved in more conflicts. This includes the ongoing conflicts in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria. Additionally, Washington is also involved in conflicts in North Korea and Yemen. Jeffrey D. Sachs is the president of the United Nations Sustainable Development Solutions Network and director of the Center for Sustainable Development at Columbia University. Thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Sachs. Talk to us about the roles of American defense manufacturers and what kind of influence do they have on the U.S.'s internal politics and foreign policies?
Basically, the military-industrial complex runs American foreign policy. The idea of American foreign policy is to have political, financial, and military dominance over as much of the world as is possible. And this goes back to the end of World War II, when Britain, the British Empire ended and the American Empire, in effect, began. I think the baton was passed to the American Empire, and in 1947, a key year for India, for other parts of the world, that was also the year that the CIA was established and the National Security Act. And the U.S. foreign policy became a foreign policy of manipulation of other governments and the placement of military bases in foreign countries all over the world. So today, the budget of the military-industrial complex is somewhere between $1 trillion and $1.5 trillion a year. There are around 800 overseas U.S. military bases. The annual contracts of the major arms producers like Northrop Grumman or General Dynamics or Raytheon or Boeing or others is hundreds of billions of dollars a year. War is big business. America's involved in lots of wars. And foreign policy is not really a subject in which the American people are asked their view. It's dominated by small groups, the White House, the CIA, the State Department, the major arms producers, and the armed services committees of the U.S. Senate and House of Representatives. And I think all of this is extraordinarily detrimental to global stability.
Mr. Sachs, from Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Libya, Ukraine, and more recently Gaza, has the U.S. military campaigns through the last 20-odd years constantly failed to bear the desired outcome?
It doesn't. We live in a web of lies and obfuscations. So, and very short attention span. We went to war in Iraq in 2003, ostensibly to end Saddam Hussein's weapons of mass destruction. You know, if you had a modest amount of talent listening to U.S. government propaganda in the lead up to that war, you could pretty much know that it's baloney. And yet, it was taken very seriously because Colin Powell went to the United Nations Security Council and talked about the threat to the peace of these weapons of mass destruction, which didn't exist. Disastrous war, very costly, horrible for American foreign policy till this very day, destabilizing the region. Nobody ever talks about it again in officialdom, because the American people are just supposed to go along. And the same reporters, these miserable, ignorant reporters, as far as I'm concerned, that propounded the war in 2003, they propounded every war since then. And they're so gung-ho on Ukraine, and they're so gung-ho on Gaza. Now they want to attack Iran. It's the same ones. If we had a checklist, you'd see, we play American baseball, of course, so we have a batting average. I don't know how it would be in cricket or other scores, but these guys have almost a zero batting average, and yet they stay as the main columnists in the American media.
Mr. Jeffrey D. Sachs, thank you very much for talking to WION World as One today.